Ask the key questions, because I may not live to the next meeting.
I do.
Get me now. The last 17 minutes of Oliver Stone.
17
I'm
minutes.
going to the gas chamber unless George Bush calls. Please, please, give me a break. I went to Yale with you. I know I didn't finish. I had to go to Vietnam. George, don't kill me. And he'll mimic me. Don't kill me, George. That Yale no good, whiff and poof.
One of the things that pisses me off about the critics is they don't want to judge your work just as a work of art. They want to judge you from all these weird angles, particularly as a cinematic historian. And I know you've denounced this once and for all, that you're being misquoted all the time. But I just thought we could talk a little bit about what you're trying to accomplish. Because filmmakers and novelists have done this for hundreds of years and been left alone. Tolstoy does it brilliantly in War and Peace, and no one attacked him for it.
That's a good spot, Chief, for the headshot.
I'm tired of it, because when they really want to get you, they say the self-announced, the self-proclaimed avatar of the 60s. This is supposed to be the definitive rock account of the 60s, or the definitive, I never said any of those words, definitive, self-proclaimed, self-announced, and these are poison words, you know?
One of the things you're deeply criticized for is the hybrid nature of some of your films, of using sort of facts and then using fiction and so on. And I think people completely miss this journey you're creating, that all that's irrelevant, that the journey is all that matters. So who gives a shit? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? What bricks you're using, you know? That, because you're creating this, what you would call a counter myth, and I think people throw that off as just words, but it's actually very profound to me, because we don't have those counter myths in our society. Families don't pass on stories anymore.
That's well said.
Movies do.
My French grandmother and father, you see, I had a very special experience when I was very young. My mother used to leave me in France in the countryside with my grandparents, who were old, and he'd been through the First War, and my grandmother was a character. She knew the old France, and they would tell me, the French loved to tell bedtime stories, especially about wolves and real medieval stories, you know. And I really almost felt, this is the 50s, early 50s, I felt in touch with the medieval ages back then. I mean, I was seeing old Paris, medieval streets, cobblestone, wolves going through the streets, climbing the water pipes, and, you know, getting into the rooms and grabbing us and taking us away. The Grand Guignol, which was a great tradition in the 50s, it was so beautiful. The kids would line up by the thousands to watch these puppet shows. The guys would really smack each other. They made Punch and Judy look like lightweights. I mean, they were really heavy, and murders would occur. The kids loved it. They love the Baroque, you know, and the Edgar Allan Poe. There is a beauty to it. It's not wrong. They would now, of course, that would be banned in American parks. The soccer moms would be after, as you know, giving bad energy. But on the contrary, it opens the imagination of the child to both the negative and the positive. You can't legislate or educate a child to be only positive. Might as well send him to the Boy Scouts and Pat Boone. You know, it ain't going to work. I mean, it will create a nation of sheep, fascist enforcing sheep who will be informing on their neighbors, like in an Orwell horror movie. But the fact is that the imagination has to be sparked in both directions to make the unique individual. Now, that's what this DNA is about. Now, which way are they going to go? Are they going to encourage individuality, or are they going to encourage conformity? That's the key bioethic issue, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that makes you different, Oliver, is that you really live life while you're making your films. It separates you from other filmmakers. They approach film as a kind of a technical exercise and kind of a job to satisfy, where you bring enormous personality, enormous experience to your work that I think adds a dimension to your work, a very personal dimension.
I think it is personal, yeah. It's a personal emotional investment which I make, which gives me my particular edge, makes it different. I have to put something of myself in it, I suppose, to make it different than ordinary behavior. But it's sad if it's true, because that means that man is becoming increasingly denatured, you know, by the environment and by the global situation, the warming, and also perhaps the you know, this whole virtual reality is setting in. It's a virtual experience, and it's not real, because experience itself has been diminished. I hope not. I mean, it would be sad to see films become increasingly pale versions of what I knew was reality. But I do notice the generation that followed ours had less experience, definitely. I don't like the jadedness and the cynicism that results from being jaded about life experience without having had any, you know. And that's what's going on. And a lot of those kids are just wise guys. They just need frankly, a punch in the face, and they ought to get in the army or get their asses kicked, you know. They really should, because once they've really been close to death and had it rubbed in their face, they're gonna be a little more humble in the face of life. When I grew up in New York, I grew up in elite art forms of theater, opera, ballet. They always seemed so elitist and pretentious, and I hated it. So the movies were my main exit in sports, you see. That's why I worshipped the heroes in sports, because they were outside, they'd get sunshine, they'd get dirt under their nails, they were doing something physical. It was real. You know, New York was very unreal to me, with a lot of cerebral activity and destructiveness and cynicism. That's part of the reason why I escaped to Vietnam, you know, just to get out of New York, because it was too much artifice. And the movies seemed to me to be this another solution, because they were anonymous. You see, I never knew who did the movies that much. It was like you could get away and hide in the dark. You didn't have to have a prescribed reaction. You didn't go to the theater and everybody has to agree, you know, the talk and the nonsense. It was all about being anonymous. Truffaut said it when he, you know, that's why he went to movies. And so when I started directing, I always naively thought that I'd be anonymous.
You had all that experience before you started making films. Was it automatic for you to, after Vietnam, to just say, I'm going to be a filmmaker? Is that something you'd always wanted to be, or was that a natural mode of expression for you?
No. I was a writer before Vietnam. Wrote a book, which came out a few years ago, it's Child's Night Dream. And after the war, I vowed never to write a book again, because I didn't believe in the future of the novel. I started to think, because in the late 60s, film schools were becoming popular. The Fellini, Antonioni, the French New Wave, all these were coming into vogue in New York, where I was living. So a couple of friends of mine who I'd known prior had gone to film schools. I couldn't believe they were given diplomas for going to see films all day. That was kind of fun. When I got the GI Bill, so I went to NYU Film School. And ironically, it turned out to be a great class, you understand. There was a lot of great people there who were working. 69, 70, 71, I made 3 short films. So here I was marrying the novel, which I had wanted to write, with the visual elements of Vietnam into sort of the screenplay form, which is a hybrid, right? The screenplay is a hybrid of word and picture. It's funny how judgmental people are who study film, you know, how quickly they become judgmental. They think they know everything. It's the nature of the young animal that, you know, he knows everything. Their tastes are determined very early. My films used to create polarities I couldn't believe. I mean, these are small films, but some would love them and some would hate them. It's a strange thing. There's a magnetization that goes on. Not necessarily a bad thing, you know. Some films you walk out, you couldn't care less. You forget about it in 5 minutes. At least here, there's some kind of feeling, emotion, passion at play. It's not like I have attention deficit disorder, as some of my critics have suggested. It's just that my mind moves fast. But I do think that so do the minds of my audience, and I think they see fast. They see profoundly, or as profoundly as they can see, and there's no point in pushing it further. I don't see how I can be accused of lack of subtlety when my images are so short, you know. Perhaps lack of subtlety is the opposite, is leaving the same image on for a minute and a half and making everybody see everything and say, and that's perhaps not subtle, because you're being subtle by showing parts, fragments, like a Picasso, of a Cubist foundation, and nobody can see the whole until you get further back. But it's cut from all these little pieces. That doesn't mean that it's bad. What's wrong with the Cubistic style of filmmaking? That's what another argument I have with critics is that they always have one style of filmmaking, which is prominent at the time, and people must do that in order to be acknowledged and financed. It's bullshit. It really hurts. We should have 6 to 10 styles of cinema working at the same time, from Cubism to postmodernism. They should all coexist. And there's another beef I got. There's no reason to write something positive about somebody by knocking somebody else, which seems to be the way to do it for a person who's got a nasty mind.
Coach D, what do you say there? A little mutiny in the back? My way. That's just great. Did you get that?
Some of the filmmakers today are politically correct, and they kiss a lot of ass. I mean, they all say the right things. A word gets out into the currency, and because of the media echo, it gets around. And then you hear filmmakers saying it back, and then all of a sudden some person is lauded for this, and all of a sudden it's cool to do that. Well, cool was a phenomenon that existed in school, you know, back in the 50s. It's always been cool. The point is that there was always this desire to be cool, this desire to be in, this desire to join and be there at the right moment when it was discovered. And that's what that critic thing is about, and that's what movies have become about. And I hate it. To me, it's supposed to be about exploration and investigation, whatever you call an art form. Ultimately, criticism is love. It should be love, it seems to me. So it's got to be about somebody that you at least can say, well, I don't like his work, but here's what he is trying to do, or say at least. You know, you don't have to be petty about that. You can say, this is what he's trying to say, I think, but this is his failure to say it.
Holy mackerel! That is football!
Pictures don't get through to a lot of people. It's funny, you know, because we work a lot watching the image over and over again in our business, and you really get to know the image. I mean, you really pay attention. You get it in the flick of an eye, because you get a trained eye after a while. It's a bit like being a point man in the infantry, really. But you show that same film, and you know the details of that film. You know where the moment hits. And you show it to an audience for the first time. Many people will come out, they don't remember a thing. They don't remember a thing. They don't catch the nuance. Their eye won't be looking at the right part of the screen. They won't even be drawn there. It should be drawn there by a good director, but unfortunately they miss a lot. And I find that when people go back a second time to the film, they always say, almost with astonishment, gee, I didn't see that. I didn't know, I never knew that, or I didn't notice that. You know, it's very rare the person comes out of one of my films, especially because they're complicated, often two films in one, as you know. They come out and it's mystifying. I mean, there's a lot to deal with, and they're not really able to synthesize all that imagery.
Yeah, the people who really get your films, I think, watch it the first time for an emotional experience.
Yeah.
And then the second time, they're a little more detached because
Yeah.
they've had that, and then
Yeah,
they
that's
can,
great.
digest it.
But that's where a film really holds up. You see, that's very well said, because the emotional, visceral experience is the first thing. That's the most important for movie. But there's another level where you're working, I think if you're able to handle it, where you're working at a mythopoetic level, where you're really trying to create icons that will last through time.
I think another thing that threatens people is you're willing to show people's contradictions, which a lot of films don't. A lot of films portray people in a certain...
And yet I'm called heavy-handed, unsubtle. How do you parry those two together?
No, I just think you're threatening. They use those words because your films are threatening. So because they're threatening, people say
I see. So the threat overcomes the ambiguity. I see. The threat is more remembered. Often they say I try to jump out of the screen and grab the audience by the throat. It's what I'm thinking about. I don't have that violence in me. I just want to make it interesting. You're not being grabbed by the throat. Your eyeballs are grabbing that by the throat. That's your call. I mean, you don't have to look. You can walk out of the theater, or you put your hands on your eyes. I don't get that. This concept of being attacked and threatened by a movie. I mean, how precious can you get? I mean, give me a break. The movie is not jumping out of the screen and pulling you in like some 3D hologram. I mean, it's getting a little precious, don't you think? Where you're talking about the art doing you damage.
You're all a bunch of fucking slaves!
Another criticism I don't agree with, they say it's exhausting. The football film is exhausting. It should be exhausting. You should find it when you play a goddamn football game for 3 hours, you are exhausted. And I'll tell you something else. Those men put everything, their heart and soul into that Sunday. When you go through what their season's like, I think you should really be drained. I think my films deal in a lot in the subconscious and a lot with the poisons and the toxins inside ourselves too. I think people have some problems with that, which is okay. It's nice. It's nice if they can maybe use it to help themselves, to understand themselves.
If you didn't touch a nerve, I think you'd question why you're doing this at all, I would think.
Yeah, but you'll never know which nerve because you can never tell. I mean, the word F-U-C-K will touch a nerve in Wichita on a Saturday night with a Baptist audience, you know, which is their nerve, you know, and then other kinds of nerves. You can get liberals to have a nerve reaction.
I think Bob's a little freaked. Yeah, he got hurt up there a bit.
The director is basically a traffic cop. Every decision is a moral decision, too. I mean, where you put the camera is a moral decision. The difference between one man and the other, where he puts the camera, is a difference between personalities and character.
We're going to have to debug the whole place.
Bugging the DA's office. This is outrageous.
I have no interest in creating a lie. It's not my nature. Creating a lie takes a lot of energy. Why would I put it in a negative thing? If I am lying, I certainly don't know about it. That's all I can say. Nixon was obsessed with a lie. He didn't think he was lying, but he studied it. He studied the lie. And it was Hitler who said, I think, something, if I'm paraphrasing him, the bigger the lie, you know, the more likely people are to believe it. Why? Because he said all people live the lie. This is Hitler talking. All people are corrupt. All people know the little lie. And when you tell them the little lie, they know you're like them. But when you create the big lie, it is so beyond them, it is so beyond their understanding that they believe it. I think that's so insane.
Did you shoot the president? I didn't shoot anybody, no, sir. They have taken me in because of the fact I have lived in the Soviet Union. I'm just a patsy.
Your idea of heightened reality, which is important, I think, in all of your films, that people, I think, misunderstand. That you're not just sort of exaggerating reality because you're creating a lie of some kind or something. You're trying to get people more in touch with their senses and more in touch with what, in fact, is there.
I have no interest in deceiving. I may be wrong in some things, details, maybe the whole thing I'm wrong, but I certainly believe that I was right, and that's all I can do. I can work by the lights of my own conscience. You know, I was very criticized by the liberal press, not all, for not feeling some, quote, responsibility for the murders after natural-born killers. And I said, why should I feel that responsibility? I'm very proud of the film. I think it's one of my best works. It's a total Rosetta Stone of the early 90s in America, and in it you can find the sickness of our society. Look for it. But don't come after me. I'm the messenger on the soul. But they did, and they said the messenger has to apologize. I said, no, not in one iota of an apology, because once you give a fraction of an apology, you take responsibility for that. I can't. It was the responsibility of the viewer to do with the film what he wanted. But, you know, nobody understood that argument. I mean, it's like you can't get half pregnant. You can't be responsible and apologize and not be accountable for it, as some journalists would have liked me to be.
And we live in an age of blaming, so it's great. You can't blame other people.
No.
I think one of the reasons they attack you, Oliver, is that they want to control the conversation, the public conversation, and your films invade that territory.
Yeah.
People talk about your films. You get in people's heads and it becomes part of the mythology
Well,
of our
that's good.
culture.
I mean, listen, I hope to touch nerves, but you know, it's depressing to think that tyranny would exist of the mind, wherein the media would dictate the argument. That's not the Socratic method, of course. You know, if democracy, and we're all being idealists here, or even some form of hybrid democracy were to work. And my father said something like, he said, look, the best thing that could happen is if we just do away with colleges, and everybody who lived a life would open up his course and sell it under the tree. And the students that wanted to listen to that guy would go and sit down and listen, because he had something to say. And then obviously the professors with something to say would be the best teachers, and you didn't have to go through all this licensing and all that, you know. I mean, there's something very true about that. That's a real democracy. Unfortunately, we don't allow that. We monopolize. We use monopolies for everything, from water to power to electricity to phones.
The richest 1% of this country owns half our country's wealth, $5 trillion.
That is, to me, one of the common themes in a weird way through your films, which is what you called somewhere the beast. It's the corporation, it's the combine, it's, you know, whether it's war making or controlling football teams, controlling the media. Yeah, the so-called system.
There is a system. It's interconnected. It's money. Mostly money, but it has to do also with perception and media and power. But money does rule. I mean, and money is interconnectable. Ultimately, American money always goes up to the top. It becomes the greediest possible. The corporations get bigger and bigger and bigger until they knock out the other guy. That's what it's about, war.
The new law of evolution in corporate America seems to be survival of the unfittest. Well, in my book, you either do it right or you get eliminated.
The assassination and Nixon are so profoundly important in your mind for American history for us to understand. Not just the details, but like an open wound that won't heal. It's sort of the feeling I get. Why we need to really continue to come to terms with this.
I think of it more as a scar, a significant scar that severed a body part or took out an organ, and the structure you know, heaved and kind of crumpled and keeps going, but in a more lugubrious way. I think that both of them hurt us, their death, and Nixon's resignation brought on a great skepticism in government. Those two factors combined, the assassination and the non-belief of the American people in the Warren Commission conclusions, which were pretty outrageous to believe. It was a shame that the murder of Kennedy was not properly investigated. It would have been the right thing to do, but it was impossible, I believe, under the circumstances, because the murderers were from within the system.
Anyone who's been in combat will tell you never in the history of gunfire has there been a bullet this ridiculous.
That distrust, and the King killing and the Robert Kennedy killing, and then Nixon's lying at the highest levels like a thug, diverting justice, you know, completely covering it up, laundering money, dirty ethics, scandalous talk in the White House, you know, dirty talk, polarization, civil war. Ironically, he looked up to Lincoln as a hero, but he created Nixon in his own way, a civil war in this country. He polarized. He's the guy who used the word silent majority, the Republican South, blue collar. I mean, he was like trying to always push things into voting groups and patterns to get those votes with symbolic icons that he'd reach out to. He really was a master politician, but at the same time, it was a corrupting influence on politics, I'm convinced. Kids born after their deaths don't know these presidents and don't know what it's about. Nixon's progeny is his survivability. He's like an alien mutant from one of those mutant series, you know. He just goes on and on. You know, different clones come up, like Bob Dole and Bush to a certain degree, Reagan to a certain degree, and now the new Bush, you know. They very much operate in the Nixon manner.
Little bastards.
It's very divisive. Very
In
divisive.
Washington, the site-
Calling of names, categorizing, labeling. It's the old McCarthy thing about destroying careers and reputations. Those are wounds. Those are scars. It's a way of doing business that the kids are going to inherit, you see. They inherit the system like we inherited it. So what are they going to be able to do about it? Well, one thing they can certainly do is look at films like mine and documentaries and read books and get their own minds. But find out what happened in the past, because in the immediate past of your own country, because it's going to come up again. It's going to be a pattern unless you deal with it. And I'm still proud of Nixon. That was a real brain teaser, because it's really a twisty structure.
Why do they hate me so much?
Just try a new biscuit.
Oh, fuck it. He doesn't like me, John. It's your fault, Henry.
I beg your pardon.
It's your people who are talking to the press.
Isn't that one of the classic American problems is we want clarity, we want the good
Yeah,
guy,
I think
bad
so.
guy, we can't stand that middle ground, which is
I
most
think that's what we wanted in the JFK death, you know. Dealey Plaza is the perfect ambush spot. It's like a movie set waiting to be built for some old John Wayne classic, you know. Good guy, John Wayne's the good guy, gets shot in the back by this Weasley little runt rat who gets gunned down by this other guy, this bully. And it all makes sense, you know. And it was like a Western. And if you walk through Dealey Plaza, which is you must walk through it, it's a national monument. I hope it's preserved. Not one brick is changed. It's so beautiful. It's like what the Greeks would call a proscenium in Greek tragedy. You know, it's like you can see the whole tragedy play itself out very clearly. It's a small spot, 3 acres. And every building is still there. All the lines of sight are still there. You can really understand the assassination, how beautifully, precisely, militarily done it was by just the layouts of the field of sight, a line of fire.
One of the films that I know was a profound disappointment was the reaction to Heaven and Earth. And here you are finally making a wonderful, sort of heroic journey based on a woman's life, and you're attacked savagely for having the presumption of doing it. Nevertheless, I know it was very satisfying to you, too.
It was a great movie for me to make, because it allowed me to be in the Thai countryside for 3 months of prep, practically, and then shooting there for most of the film exposed me to the rural side of Thailand, which you don't get in Bangkok. I mean, we really were living among monks. I mean, every day they walk through the villages. They're there, and they're taken care of by the people. They're fed their alms every day, and life is very harmonic. The Thai people are some of the gentlest people I've ever met in the world. They're non-judgmental. So are Asian people in general. And Buddhism has had a calming effect. And much of the wars, I mean, there'll always be a warlike side. I mean, Buddhism is not perfect, and there are bad Buddhists, but a lot of that wars of my lifetime were instigated really by imperialism, by America and France originally. And America really brought a lot of pain to Asia, a lot of pain. It's almost like their karma. If you believe in retribution of karma, where is America going to go after that?
I'm a killer, baby. I kill so many over there.
Doing Heaven and Earth was a way for me, anyway, to pay atonement and also homage to the Vietnamese. I tried. You know, it's hard when you make any Asian film with English accents or American accents, because people will automatically, some people will have a suspension of disbelief. Leila Hayslip lived a life of great suffering. She underwent many different changes in her life, accepts change as the way of life, and at the same time was able to forgive her enemies. And for that, I thought, was an extraordinary gift that, you know, we don't have in America. We practice revenge in our movies. You know, we get even. We don't turn the other cheek. And she said, in fact, in her book, a beautiful book she wrote, you know, maybe in the long run, it's my enemies who taught me more than my friends. They taught me the power to forgive, or maybe taught me something about myself, you know. So beautiful thoughts, and I hadn't heard those thoughts in masculine movies, so I tried to make a more feminine movie. I watched the film, I'm a sap, I cry. It makes me cry, because the passage of time and the proximity to death, the last speech of the brother in the village, these things make me cry because they're about the passage of time, and that's one of my weaknesses. I always remember the ghosts, your grandmothers, your great parents, you always remember the past. That makes me cry.
Afterward, He found no need to visit me in my dreams.
Ghosts play a role. Ghosts, like in Shakespeare, would be, in Hamlet's father, would be the man who's prompting him, whether rightly or wrongly, to get revenge. So he's always the mystery, the ghost figure. In the football movie, for example, the ghosts are used as tradition, the ghosts of tradition that are always there. They hover over the game, like the Greek gods did over the Iliad on the fields of Troy. Ghosts are the reminder of the past. They're ergo that they do represent guilt and also can represent other emotions too. They could represent healing. They can represent anything you want them to. But ghosts are just in the woodwork. There are skeletons in every closet. Cameron Diaz has a ghost, her father. Ghosts are everywhere. Jamie Foxx denies the ghosts until what happens in the last play of the game, he scores his touchdown because he picks the right hole to go through, because basically he communicates with a ghost. If you look very closely at the film, it's show you what the old player does the moment before Jamie does. He does the exact same thing. So I'm indicating that there's an instinct that is ghost-like. We have a sensitivity that ties us to the past, all of us. It's in our genes, it's in our minds, our hearts. It's a very strong feeling I have, and I know I'm right. I mean, I'm ridiculed all the time for my ghosts and my Indians. I don't care. I mean, I believe in it. I believe in ghosts. I always have. I never had a problem with Henry James turning the screw. But Indians, too, are a form of ghosts because they are the American ghost, as is the black slave. They're the two biggest ghosts we have. You know, we wiped out the Indians, we saved the slaves during the war, but we branded them forever with a hideous legacy. So the ghosts, to me, also represent that same power of the past, pulling at its guilt, and also purity. Redemption exists inside that. So you have guilt and redemption go hand in hand. So when you see the purity of the playing field, the agon of men, the competitiveness in war, sports and the Olympic Games, the Greeks were very much into that. Why? It brought men honor. It brought men glory. Why was man alive? To achieve honor and glory, not happiness. Happiness was part of it. Yeah, you could be happy, but suffering was also a part of it because you can't achieve glory without suffering. That's an ethic that, is very pagan. The Christian world closed that down to a certain degree, but not me. They didn't get me. They almost got me. They got me for a few years, but I broke out of Christianity because I see it. I mean, I may have instincts that are still Christian, but I do see the overall trap of Christianity. And it is a trap, believe me. Sacred play, or call it ritual play, on a Sunday afternoon, we fight a war. The men don't die anymore, but they fight the same ritual, which is a war. And it's sacred. And if you think back to The Doors and Jimmy Morrison on the airplane, when that great scene of Madsen says, you're going to end up a pile of shit in heaven, blah, 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 you're nothing. He's really putting down his ego, And Morrison's laughing at him, and he says, you know what they need? What? Something sacred. Life is meaningless without it. So that's what's beautiful about the Greek philosophy. And it's not a wimp philosophy. Unfortunately, Christianity doesn't put out much hope because all the saints and the priests and all the guys are wimps. They're all thin-shouldered guys. You don't respect them.
Here, we'll get her to renounce Satan and get with Christ's program, won't we?
They're all guys in retreat from the world who are beating themselves on the back, and they got no life. They're hermits. Whereas the Greek guys are out there, winning wars, constructing things, achieving things, winning great honors, winning Olympic races, getting women, getting material possessions if they want that, or else looking for something else, like Achilles was. It's just different values, and I don't understand the Christians don't put much hope for me on something to achieve any more than the Muslim values scare me too, because it's just about being a warrior in the crusade of the Quran. And everybody else is an infidel. Nobody's good enough. The Greeks don't care about that. They don't care if you have another religion. So, this is all very important stuff. The past, ghosts, Indians, purity, the blood, the hunt. And it ties up to Elias and Platoon, goes back to him. Goes through Morrison with his Indian fantasies. Morrison created those fantasies, not me. Morrison always thought that he was the soul of an Indian boy who had died on a highway accident he saw as a kid. And the way he behaved on stage, the Indian dancing, often the Indian drumming, which was beautifully done by his group. I paid it homage in Roadhouse Blues at the end of the movie with the Indians on the stage and the outtakes. I got a bunch of Sioux, great Sioux Indians. It was the last night of shooting up in San Francisco, and they got happy as can be. We worked 18, 20 straight hours to finish the shoot. We had them up on wires and these hot lights that Richardson had set up. They were so hot that the higher we brought them to the ceiling on the wires, the more their wigs would light up on fire. Bob was insane. Val Kilmer's wig goes up in flames. I'm serious. This is insane. And the Indians are drunk because they're drinking on the side. It got crazier and crazier and crazier. Chasing around, you know, one of them was looking for me with a tomahawk because he thought that I had been after his ugly squaw. But the point is that the Indians can be bad too, but they're also wonderful people. And there's something very pure still in their essence, you know, that may have been diluted by corruption in many cases, but it's still pure. So I respect the Aboriginal peoples of all races and places. And I hope all countries would stay a little bit in touch with their natures, because if they denature themselves completely, they'll be living in shopping malls with security guards and teachers and the right private schools, but they're not going to have much of a life. You know, it'll be a vacuumless life.
My name is Mallory. This is Mickey.
Natural Born Killer's original script didn't have any Indian in it. It was a Southwest, it seemed right. I'd seen Russell Means' performance in The Last of the Mohicans, and it was powerful. I wanted that presence because it's the Indian who catches them with his consciousness and makes Mickey and Mallory aware for the first time that they do have a conscience. The kids wake up. Prior to that, they're totally numbed out, TV, clueless kids of the universe on some romantic binge, killing people. Then the Indian makes them very aware of something that's inside them.
This is so bad!
Mallory, for the first time, expresses remorse. Bad, bad, bad. And chases him out of the house. And from then on, they're screwed. They're caught because the rattlesnakes attack them. The poison of knowledge, in a sense, the poison of consciousness. They're trying to get to the drug zone to get the antidote for the snake poison, right? Which is, in a sense, the American solution to knowledge is some kind of medication, correct? But the fact is they'd never get it because it's sold out. There is no antidote to the snake, which is good for them because you either die or you're going to live. That's what Mickey says there. You either die or you live when you get poisoned by a snake, right? And if you're strong enough, the Indians would say, you could withstand the poison. They never got shot with the anti-snake venom, and they survived into the prison scene, and they became new people in the prison. They kill to get out of the prison, but they only kill as need be to get back together to survive. They don't kill gratuitously at all. And when they kill Downey, it's a very important moment, because that's a decision to be made. As Woody says, he says, I don't know what this is about, but Frankenstein killed Dr. Frankenstein. You know, that's a great line for me, because Woody knows he's been made the monster by the media. He's participated in the game. He became a good media person for his few weeks, and the Downeys of the world sold him. And now he's saying, I'm the monster, but I don't want the doctor around anymore because I want to get rid of this energy that you're bringing. So he has to kill the media. They have to kill Downey. If they don't kill Downey, they will be tracked forever. Only by killing off the media can they disappear into the underground. And that's what sets up the last shot of the film, which is misunderstood, which is, again, them as white trash roadsters in their trailer truck with two kids and another on the way. They've become Mr. and Mrs. America, which is funny because when you look at everybody in America, you go around in the West and stuff, you see gas stations and diners and hotels. You all see these people and you wonder, what the hell is their background? How many people have they killed? I mean, America is filled with second acts. Or 12-step people who have been through hell, or how many people have been in jail in America that we're a pretty wild country. So especially in the Southwest, you feel that madness. I love the ending because to me it's about the 90s too. Everybody was getting off, everybody was making it. The OJs of the world and the Tanya Hardings. People were walking away. That's what the 90s was about, the early 90s. That's what this film was made out of, that period of, there was great evil in the land. I felt there was something really evil, and I tried to satirize it. It was misunderstood, as you know. I don't see how Americans could not see that as satire or as a grotesque exaggeration. I mean, it was not in any way a realistic film. It wasn't made as such. And if you look at my other work, I mean, you can see that those were realistically violent films.
That also opens up your sense of humor, because I think you have a deeply, what I would call, existential sense of humor, as opposed to many other kinds of slapstick, jokey kind of humor. I mean, humor that comes out of the deepest part of who we are. So it's a different kind of laugh, it seems to me. It's a deeper one.
I wasn't seeking to say that Mickey's a heavy dude by any means, nor is Mallory. They're very like people. They're very typical people. They're like most of the fuck-ups who kill, you know, especially lovers. You know, they're not really thinking very much. They're on drugs, or they just don't know what they're going to do next except rob the next gas station and move on and be in love. You know, life is short. It's the American way.
I'm telling you, these two motherfuckers are a walking reminder of just how fucked up this system really is.
I think that it was cast comedically. I mean, to put Tommy Lee Jones in a suit that's 2 times too small for him is hilarious. And the way he played it was silly from the beginning, like a Roadrunner cartoon. Scagnetti was over the top. Downey was over the top. Everybody was over the top. It was fun. I laugh, of course, at dark stuff. The darker, the better.
There you go, sweet-talking me again.
U-Turn had a lot of funny stuff, too, which was very dark. Very dark. I mean, Sean Penn was having a lousy day. You can't get a worse day than a U-Turn. And yet the film came out of the deepest, deepest part of me. But at its deepest level, U-Turn is extremely nihilistic and represented my mood at the time. Because coming off of Nixon, perhaps I was disappointed. Nixon was not appreciated by as many people as I'd hoped it would be, because I think it's one of my best films.
You're still looking.
U-Turn was out of that nihilism. It was an end of a cycle for me. At the end, nobody survived, which is really gutsy. I mean, that's what film noir is. Nobody's supposed to survive. They're all weak people. They're all characterless people. They all have major flaws. And like scorpions in a bucket killed each other. For me, that took guts. You know, that's like saying, I'm going to make a movie with no hope. And by making that, I released something in myself. I really feel that was, I finally got rid of that, you know. That hopelessness was gone, which I had in me. I had a sense of hopelessness. And then after that, I really felt much more optimistic and able to take on the size and epic color of that football movie, which was huge. It was like a modern gladiator movie or a modern Knights story about men, women, modern corporate society, turn of the century, insecurity, the size, the big money, the ruthlessness, the expediency of morality, the use of people. Nobody was safe. It bespoke a country of tremendous uncertainty. I would say the God of uncertainty is a guiding principle of the 21st century today. So every film comes when you're ready. I was rushing my life for 10 years. A film a year is a little too much the way you grow. I couldn't grow in between, you know. I was just trying to get out past stuff. Then when after I Nixon, I kind of slowed down to write the books, the fiction book, then the nonfiction book. Gave me a chance to put my life in order, spend more time with my new daughter, and then at that time, slow my life down to try to find the right pace of my life and its growth with the growth of my subject, you see. It's really important to do the film right and do it in conjunction with your own growth. It should fit. Everything should be in harmony.
This is what I'm trying to say to you, bro. When a man looks back on his life, he should be proud of all of it.
Right now, I've been going through this great change again. That's what's really good about my life, is I change. Every film is another change for me. It's truly a Buddhist precept that all life is change. It will forever be change, and it's part of the illusion.
Don't you try to create also for the viewer that sense of discovery of the subject that you also experience in making the film? I mean, more than most filmmakers, I get the feeling, because you were saying last night.
That's nice.
If you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a nice feeling if you can do it. I mean, otherwise, if you fail at it, it's called exposition, and it's boring. I hate that. And I do have I mean, those who appreciate my films, not everyone, would say that I've been able to jam huge amounts of information in a film and make it entertaining, or disguise it in a way that it doesn't feel like you're being lectured to. I have had long speeches, from Garrison and JFK to Jimmy Woods and Salvador and Al Pacino and Any Given Sunday. I made some speeches, but I thought there were all reasons for them to be made.
Why was Kennedy killed? Who benefited? Who has the power to cover it up?
Donald Sutherland has the longest speech of all time in JFK as Mr. X.
No matter how many die, no matter how much it costs, the perpetrators must be on the winning side and never subject to prosecution for anything by anyone. That is a coup d'etat.
Yeah, but it's all rhythm and timing. If the story demands it and you feel the need for it.
I love that, frankly. I love intelligent movies that come at you fast. You're just giving information fast, hoping that people will get it fast, and if they don't, they'll get some part of it. They'll understand the subconscious.
But I also get the impression, maybe it goes back to your combat experience or before that with your childhood and the parents and so on, that you have a very, I don't want to use the word aggressive falsely here, but you have a very intense sense of life, and your films have that feeling, that life is intense, whether you see it or not, whether you get it or not, everything around you is intense.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think life's very intense. I mean, I do. You can't just live for happiness. You're gonna have moments of happiness and joy, of course, with your family, love, children, beautiful countrysides, music. I mean, there's millions of ways. You're never going to always experience joy. Joy only means something if it has a correlative in suffering. So I think life is this really difficult balance between suffering and joy, and they're both very tricky. You know, there's samsara, as the Buddha said. You have to stay detached a bit too from it. That's what's helped me in my later years, because when I was younger, I did live too close to the fire. I felt like Icarus getting burned with his wings. Balance is all. Balance is all. But you must accept the idea that life is struggle. It always was. I mean, evolution is a concept of struggle. And as I referred to the Greeks, they did believe that a man had to be a hero. I noticed a lot of women mock my films or a sense of a hero in me. I really feel that there's almost an agenda there, feminism. Why can't a man or a woman be a hero? It's an old concept. It was valid for centuries. The concept of a hero that I believed in as a kid involved the quest for self-knowledge, the pursuit of truth, risk and sacrifice, and maybe in the end to inspire others with a sense of that nobility of effort.
I'm so proud of you, Riley. You have grown up to see the side of things that's hidden from most people.
I think whether we like it or not, film feeds the collective unconscious of the culture probably more than anything that exists in terms of the passing on values to the next generation, passing on imagery, passing on stories, probably more than any other art form. I think it's probably reasonable to say that. And I think that's why your films in some ways have enormous power, because they feed into that so deeply. And I assume that's something that's important to you, because I know you said, like with JFK, you're hoping the next generation will ask more questions, will help resolve things, or with Nixon, that they'll help remember Nixon, remember the lessons of Nixon, and so on.
You know, they're not going to resolve anything on JFK, but the movie was intended partly to deconstruct reality, to make them think about what they're being fed, about all situations. When they grow up, they're going to have other situations. I hope that they would have the good sense to think for themselves and to try to see beneath the surface, because politics and power are very hypocritical.
You're a mouse fighting a gorilla. Kennedy's as dead as that crab meat. The government's still breathing. You want to line up with a dead man?
It's about control, you know, it's about control of a population. And Americans have a chance to, do they have a chance to really reassert their individuality and control this government? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where this government is going. Money seems to be the determinant.
Your agency will continue at current levels of funding.
Current levels may not be sufficient.
But you know, those films matter in the end, because if they say something, Nixon's saying something, so is Kennedy, so is a lot of them, and they're just saying something, you know, that they got to hear, because they got to remember. They got to remember. Memory is important. If you don't remember them, you don't remember. You have to remember the defeats as well as the victories, because they're battles. If you only remember the victories, you're going to be an arrogant son of a bitch, like we were in Vietnam, and we're going to lose. The arrogance of World War II. But if you remember your defeats, as most good soldiers do, by the way, it's soldiers, the good soldiers, who are always the first to tell you not to go to war.
I love your remark in the book about Ambrose.
Stephen Ambrose, yeah. A man who never met a warrior he didn't love, you know.
Yeah.
He should serve with a guy like Patton and really see what it's like. One day in the field, and he'll get it. He'll get it. He doesn't understand the warrior mentality. He doesn't understand the great courage it takes, because he doesn't understand the stakes. To him, death is an abstract.
I am a fucking Vietnam veteran!
He doesn't understand death and how scary it is to a soldier, to the individual soldier.
I've come to give you your last rites. Are you ready? Good.
All through our history, we see the same patterns of imperialism, attacking other countries, taking other forms, but those come up again and again because we fundamentally never deal with it, you see. We never really feel the guilt. We don't like guilt in America. After Vietnam, the guilt was intense, as you know. And many people ignored it, of course, and there was a very strong movement against guilt about that war. People were in denial that we had killed 2 to 3 million Cambodians and Vietnamese. It was all about American soldiers, which is very selfish, very selfish. And I think guilt is an emotion that you have to deal with. Don't run from it. There was no ends to which we would go to get even with the Vietnamese who had thrown us out of Vietnam. Revenge. The Rambo movies were a cycle of revenge. So Platoon was a bit of an antidote to that, if you remember, because it came at the time when Oliver North overstepped his hubris and got caught in the Iran-Contra scandal. And it started to shift the momentum away towards a more critical view of government and their abuse of power. Now that has shifted again with the Saving Private Ryan kind of patriotism, which I find very simple-minded and I think very war-oriented. But if you really look at the dialogue that's going on between the soldiers, it's very much the cliche dialogue of World War II films.
I don't think I'm gonna make it out of here. You understand what I'm saying to you?
I tried to move away from that in Platoon. I tried to put out a tired dialogue, the feeling of, people don't want to talk.
Oh.
It was very accurate, at least to my experience, as just people not giving a shit, and I pissed off some people because there's this mythology about camaraderie in war, Believe me, that camaraderie comes and goes, I've been in a lot of units, and some better than others, combat units, and camaraderie is a very strange thing, but when people start sentimentalizing it, you don't believe them. There's something wrong about it. They're either forgetting what they experienced or they're over-sentimentalizing their bonds with other men who they haven't seen since the war.
W.H. Auden wrote a great essay where he talked about the worst thing that can happen in society is when the arts are split between the very sort of fine arts and then schlock pop art. The great artists bridge the two, and I think your work does that. And I think very few filmmakers do that. Either they create art house movies for 12 people, which are hard to endure often, or they create mass appeal films, which are hard to endure.
It's a tough little bridge, isn't it? You hope to get across it. I think there are many fine writer-directors working, and I think we're all trying to cross it each day. We're trying to make it human. At the same time, we want to make it fun and exciting. And our society, does it have a collective unconscious? You raised the question. I don't know. Has it been tainted like atomic water by television? Does it run underground into our brains? And has television polluted our universe? Who is our collective unconscious? David Letterman? Jay Leno? Are we supposed to be jokesters? College sophomore humor? I mean, these guys make a joke of everything, right? The world is a joke. They don't really understand the concepts of what's really going on, which is serious. Because America is joke-ridden, and we tend to the college sophomore approach to life.
Is there anyone besides Lee Harvey Oswald who you think didn't conspire to kill the president?
Is that our collective unconscious? I would hope not. I would choose not to believe so. I like to choose to believe that there's a better, higher collective unconscious that has more meaning and significance, that there are good kids out there that are going to go out and help the world and change the world. They're going to go work in Africa and the Middle East. They're going to work in Asia. They're going to try to spread values and try to learn from other countries too, but try to unite into some kind of global system that would be healthy and evolutionary and would respect the ecosystem.
The whole idea that men have to go through a rite of passage to become men. I mean, boys have to go through a rite of passage.
Women too. I think women have to go through their own passages. There's no rite of passage in America. It's a very pampered society. Their rite of passage is watching Felicity and Party of Five and Sex in the City and thinking that's life. Give me a break. I feel sorry for those kids. They're real airheads, and that's the reason we have sometimes movies that, you wouldn't want to see after the age of 17. I can't get interested in youthful television. It doesn't teach me anything about what their life's attention spans are. I don't write for them. I don't want to write down to an audience of idiots, of teenage morons who think they're smarter than everybody else.
If I was a mass murderer, I'd be Mickey and Mallory.
That's not my bag. I'll just go make them because I want to make it. I hope they're sufficiently unique that they just stand out. You can't chase the crowd. You'll get killed. I hope we don't become a nation of complete airheads. If we can keep the population captive as airheads, it would suit the ruling class fine.
That's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Do not forget your dying king. Show this world that this is still a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Nothing as long as you live will ever be more important. It's up to you.
I never played down to the audience. I always, if anything, played up to them and treated them as equals, you know. So not everybody's going to like my movies, but on the other hand, I'm hoping to get to some kind of collective unconscious.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I found Homer achieved in the Iliad, where you have as much sympathy for the Trojans, if not more so, as much understanding for their plight as you do for the Greeks, and he was a Greek, of course. And you often quote, like, is it Fitzgerald, about the ability to hold contrary points of view in your mind. I mean, that's, I think, why your films are very demanding for some people.
Yeah, good.
Do it.
I always admired Alexander because of the momentum and the speed with which he traveled and he conquered. And, you know, in my small little way, I mean, my metaphoric way, I would say the countries were films, you know, and I moved through them. Like, he conquered, he got to Bactria, then he got to Eponinum, or he got to Greece. Next thing you know, he's in Afghanistan. Next thing you know, he's in Peshawar in Pakistan. Next thing you know, he's in Iraq. You know, he's striking everywhere. And I think it was great. It was just great. We had a great run. But definitely, it's a new phase now.
I could go on for another hour, but I know you're swamped with stuff to do.
Not an hour.
Oh, yeah.
So many hours of my life.
Oh,
I haven't written my fucking script. I'm in deep shit. Every day I'm in deep shit. Because of you.
I know. Yeah. I just want to get as much coverage as I can, or it's going to be a boring show.
You just complain of too much, and now you're complaining of too little. You're a typical news guy in media.
Media?
You never have enough.
God.
You want me to expose myself
Start by
more.
insulting me. That's great.
You want me to be everything to you.